everyone. It's Judy Warner. Thanks for joining us again at this week's Ecosystem Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Sean Patterson from Summit Interconnect Technologies. Recently, I noticed on LinkedIn, Sean has gone from being the COO at Summit to the CTO, and I see that he's leveraging AI to really do some novel and amazing things that serve both design engineers and the manufacturing side of the business and leveraging new tools to make a real difference. We're going to talk about what that impact will be for both engineers and fabricators, and I think you'll really enjoy the insights he shares. Now let's jump into our conversation. Hi, Sean. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm really glad to have you back on the podcast and talk about the fun subjects we're going to dig into today.
Nice to be back.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself, Sean, and then tell us a little bit about Summit Interconnect.
Sure. So again, my name's Sean Patterson. I am the Chief Technology Officer for Summit Interconnect. Summit Interconnect, we are the largest private manufacturer of bare boards in the United States, and we also have manufacturing facilities in Canada as well. We handle everything from prototyping to volume, United States level volumes through our 8 manufacturing plants, including one of those is a quick turn assembly plant. And so we service aerospace and defense customers, commercial customers across the United States.
Well, I've been stalking you a little bit on LinkedIn lately, and I noticed you had a title change and also sort of a little passion project that I think is tangential to your work at Summit. So can you tell us about what is behind that title change and then sort of the side project you've been working on, which I've been enjoying, by the way?
I'm glad, and I've enjoyed you participating in those areas. So I was the chief operating officer until earlier this year, and we created a new C-suite title for chief technology officer. We didn't have that before. We realized that the COO position has a lot of day-to-day responsibilities, and with where the world is at, particularly as it relates to things like passion projects around AI. But also where the PCB industry has been at for the past, 20, 30 years at this point in time, I say largely so we'll go with the dot-com bust. Our engineering in the United States kind of, as it relates to process engineering, it really kind of leveled off into maintainer mode. We had already kind of battened down the hatches after the dot-com bust. And, it's not that we don't have good engineers, but we haven't collectively done it as an industry to kind of get back to what good looks like and be the leaders in manufacturing. And largely a lot of that went overseas, and the pricing got commoditized, and the ability of companies to invest in these areas, particularly capital and people, and give people really good career paths, really didn't have a good time for a couple of decades. I think in the last 5 years, that's really changed. There's a lot of momentum towards, we'll say reshoring, but really reinventing inside the U.S. to do what we need to do to support particularly aerospace and defense, and a tangential
Right.
to that, the commercial aspects, especially when it relates to quick turn like Summit does. And so with the COO position taking a lot of that day, I sort of had the CTO title before. I had a software development team and things like that. But at the end of the day, we have to ship products in order to even afford those software development teams. And so my attention really had to be over there. Through a series of really awesome hires, quite frankly, and where our VP ranks are and our general manager ranks are right now, it really enables me to kind of step back, give the day-to-day to somebody else, and really focus on establishing our process engineering in what you would expect from a manufacturing company in 2025. With PFMEA analysis, what our own career pathing even looks like to keep engineers moving along, and how we start to use digital tools, Industry 4.0 kind of concepts, which have struggled, honestly, globally, even in PCBs, because it's a unique beast in manufacturing, right? It's multidisciplinary engineering of contract manufacturing, and I sort of ironically put it.
Chemistry and
Yeah, there's there's
All
chemistries,
of
there's
that.
electrical engineering, mechanical engineering. Like that's really why I like it. But it is a knowable thing if you can understand and you can know it. But it does take a lot of different engineering disciplines, into to account. But I think like the classic example is how do most companies sort of track things, right? A lot of go to RFIDs and QR codes, things like that. And it's not that we're anti using those things. We try to employ them. But when you start to put it on your product, we actually make the products that make the thing that other people track with, right? RFIDs are mini printed circuit boards.
Right.
And it happens to be that whenever you're actually manufacturing a printed circuit board, generally speaking, in many parts of the manufacturing process, it's a short circuit. And so it's actually can't even function there. And you're putting it into plating chemistries and heating it up to hundreds of degrees Fahrenheit under heat and pressure. And these traditional things that people would use to start to migrate towards industry 4.0, like the very industry that can even enable that it's very hard to do. We also, you know, globally are more, we have industry, things like IPC and things like that, and they're great organizations. Um, but our ability to come together as an absolute industry and drive standards for industry 4.0 has failed. It's failed for a long time.
Thank you for
And
saying that out loud. Everybody thinks it, but I feel like in our circles, no one says it. And
it's
what
not for
I
lack of
really
better.
want
I
to
mean,
know is anybody thinking about how this impacts engineers that are audience or the companies that they run I mean, I know they participate in things like IPC, but anyways, it's broken.
it is.
All kudos to
But look,
them, but it's
but look,
broken.
it's also because we've been commoditized globally too, and arguably, especially in the United States now. I mean, the circuit boards that we're making in aerospace and defense are engineered products, but they're not treated that way as it relates to supply chains.
Right.
Um, and and so it's been difficult. But you look at sort of like the semiconductor industry. Well, you have multi-billion-dollar behemoths that can absolutely say this is the way all supply chain. You're going to do it this way. We don't have that leverage
Right.
between ourselves. And at the end of the day, a lot of our the equipment that we use is our mom and pop shops that are a lot of European and even in Taiwan and things like that. There's not like huge ones that are able to they themselves actually swing where we're at. Um, so anyways, the CTO role was created to focus on that across engineering, to really make sure we do more stuff like this and work with designers and using people like Jerry Partita, who you interview a lot, um, to go and help designers understand how their board will be manufactured so that you can design it better for a manufacturer, DFM, right? Um,
Absolutely. And like give that the reason I came up with the name the ecosystem is the dream that we would have cross-functional visibility and understanding. But, we can dream, Sean, don't laugh at me, but this is what we wish we all had. And maybe, by the way, your passion project, I don't want to pivot too soon, is how do we leverage AI in the factory, outside of the
right.
factory, as engineers?
Yes.
Like, how do you think am I jumping ahead here? I don't want to get ahead
Well,
before you finished your
I can.
thought.
I think I can lead into it here,
Okay.
but because it's all symbiotic to I think what people are looking for, right? Um, with the CTO role, it is this traditional PCB stuff but we need to modernize it, right? We need to
Right.
modernize it. We need to give career pathing, and we need to change how we think about things. And then there's my other part is CTO and head of AI. Okay. Um, AI is, and even this conversation, I'm going to overuse the word, and it's not, it means many things to many different people, and depending on the applications, right? But what you have now is, let's talk about this lack of Industry 4.0 standards. I sort of view AI as it relates to not just the chat GPT kind of stuff. Okay. When you actually put it into workflows, at the end of the day, a lot of time spent on computers, it's translating one data structure to another data structure. And for a very long times, we have had human doing that. You're,
Yeah.
it's the human, when you don't have a heart at one API on some system to another API, and they're not hardened and matched up, which
Hmm.
requires phone call coordination and software development and all those kind of things.
It's hard
It,
or
if, yeah,
impossible.
yes. And so we've always had humans kind of band-aid that, right? Well, now an LLM in these kind of other systems, they can be the ones that they're the ones that translate one data output to another data output. Okay. And so when we talk about Industry 4.0, it is now getting to the point, and I'll give you an example in a second, where using the knowledge that exists in these models through a ChatGPT kind of interface, you can be taught with no knowledge whatsoever how to do that Industry 4.0 yourself. And therefore, you actually don't need, and because you have this LLM in the middle, you don't need to coordinate between my drill suppliers to my ERP and all these other things. I don't have to have all those companies come together. And you actually kind of don't need a standard when you don't have it at a high frequency level, when it's not, information every, half a second. You can instead put these things in the middle, and that is what our industry needs, certainly to move the needle as it relates to quality and throughput. And so AI can help do that. And I think that really plays also to what your design engineers that listen to this podcast can kind of do. You now have the ability to learn and execute anything you've ever wanted to do if you're willing to be curious. I think a little bit of systems thinking helps as well. And that
Absolutely.
aspect will absolutely grow even more.
Yep.
But if you are a curious person, you now have a system, and I don't care if I'll use ChatGPT word a lot, and that's only because it's good for beginners. But there's ChatGPT, there's Claude, there's Grok, there's all these other things. Like I use all of them for what they're good at, and what they're good at changes every other day. So,
True.
you now have the ability to ask it how to do this. Okay, so let me just give the example. So
Yep.
for Internet of Things, I've always been frustrated by how much people would charge for just like pH probes, industrial pH probes, and then like the cloud system that has to back it. I mean, for small, medium businesses, manufacturers in particular, in the United States and in Europe, like you can't really afford it. And a lot of times at scale, it doesn't necessarily actually drive the ROI based on how much you spent and the recurring SaaS costs. The SaaS model does not work for small and medium businesses.
Explain what you mean for our audience that doesn't understand a pH probe. Give it a little
Yeah.
more background for that, will you?
A pH probe in a plating tank. So something that just senses the pH level in a body of water. Okay.
So when your chemicals are spent, you need to
There's
refresh your
various reasons
chemicals.
to ask it, but you're
Okay.
keeping your processes in control. Okay. We could
Right.
even do it as like a just like a water temperature sensor that you would maybe want for your home. Something like that. To do that now, you don't need to be a hardware engineer. Okay. You can go on to a ChatGPT, be good about your prompt and say, I'm trying to make a pH probe sensor that will be wireless. I want the data to be pre-processed. I'm just using words, and about the words
Right.
I'm using will get you there. Okay. I want an order list from Amazon. Okay. Give me a shopping list for Amazon for the actual things that will all connect together. You know which ones you just told me to buy. So give me a schematic for how to pen these things out. Okay. And people start to get worried about like how crazy that is, right? It's not like you effectively get a Lego build manual for this stuff. You
Well,
don't
yeah, there's
actually
a
need to
lot of
know what you're doing,
you
right?
may be able to do this with Arduino or some open
Yeah,
source thing.
correct.
So
Yeah.
this is not breaking the rules here.
Generally, when you say, "Hey, let's keep the cost low," it's some Arduino type background or a pod.
Right.
And then give me the code, right? So now it's an extension yourself. So give me the C code. If you don't even know how to upload it, then ask it how to upload it. And for the most part, between a cut and paste back and forth, let me say it this way: from cutting and pasting back and forth, you can make that. And just as a proof of concept, I did that this weekend. The parts came yesterday, and albeit I had to solder one part because I should have ordered it soldered, but I didn't. And so I had to put a pin header on it. You can look that up on ChatGPT if you know what I'm talking about. And it worked within 45 minutes. And
That's
I did it
crazy.
from like a blind, I know nothing kind of approach. The code worked right away, by the way. I just had to take one wire to the other, and it gave me that pin out, right? It literally said, port 0 to port 1 on this one. And it's just a Lego instruction manual. Those things are possible now. And that's on the hardware side of things. And so we can start to get into Industry 4.0 and put it in places that make sense to us without this large cost overhead. And by the way, then we also can get deeper into understanding what our processes are like, because I don't need to pay another company how, these absorbent fees that really, I got to get the ROI, think about it ahead of time before just literally getting that was $30 on Amazon to do all of that. Whereas again, that same sensor system is about $700. And then you're tied to the cloud as well. And then you don't own your own data. The company that has the data, they're the ones that own it. Right.
Right.
So it's that kind of stuff. But that relates more also to, your designer community of,
Well, the way,
if
let
you
me
had
just
these problems, you can solve
insert
them
here
yourself.
really quick is the way that I see that design engineers have onboarded AI in the most meaningful way is embedded and spooling up Python code. They do it every day. They've tested it over and over again, and it's putting out just really good, if not perfect code. And they're using that at scale. I see it everywhere. I'm I'm not sure I have the insight for the other ways that they're leveraging it, but I am for our audience sake. Am really interested and how that's gonna impact them besides the code. I mean, you that was a great example where if you needed, say, a test board or something like
Yeah. The
to
biggest
do
problem is
in-house
people don't ever
test
ask the
or
question, right? Nobody asks the question. Like it's very, I've never had the AI system tell me no. Now, has it been wrong occasionally? Yeah. It's not the part about turning the keys over to AI. You are still a thought leader. It is the thought partner with you. I don't know where that goes out in the future, but it's not AI is
yeah,
taking people's jobs. It's the people that are using AI that are going to be so highly enhanced, right? I mean, my software development team's using these kind of coding platforms now, which there's sort of, I'll say there's haters out on the internet and there's people that embrace it. I think if you can extrapolate and see where the world is going, you should be on the embrace it now, because one, you'll be on the curve before the curve really, really inverts. And two, if it's doing 95% of the work, that allows you to think at a much bigger level and orchestrate things. Okay. And, and arguably, if you actually approach these systems right, which I have done, just so as a hobbyist level, I haven't, hasn't not worked yet. You
well,
just need
I'm
to think about how to
leveraging it.
interact with it, right?
Right, and, that's the thing that I was sort of stalking you, teasing you that I was stalking you is because you've been putting out these AI tips of the day kind of things, and you've turned me on some juicy little nuggets that quite honestly I've used and leveraged, and I'm like, "Ooh, I never thought of that one," and tried it, and it's worked out great. So I can tell you 100%, learning how to write a good prompt or query AI in just a slightly different way, like the one you gave me was to ask it not just how to do the thing, but give me less obvious answers to the same questions or show me what I may not be considering,
Right.
right? So it helps you like patch your blind spots, right? And your natural prejudice, towards a certain viewpoint. And your point about it's not taking your jobs, I like someone said recently, AI is not coming to take your job, it's coming to take your tasks, right?
That's fair.
But you have to lead it. It's your strategy, it's your mind, it's your engineering intuition.
Yeah.
It's like getting free help, you know? Um, so I
You
think
now
it just
have
has
the best teacher in the world in your pocket, and it will teach you the way you absorb information. And you just have to be specific with it. Hey, how can I learn to do this thing? And we'll teach you. And if you don't understand it, then eventually you can dumb it down and say, teach it to me as if I was an eighth grader or ninth grader. And inevitably, it always goes back to the lemonade stand example, especially if it's a business thing. Um, but I think it helps people do these and learn, right? So as it relates to design engineers and sort of just engineers, period, right? I think of these things in three pillars. One is sort of AI for everybody. That's the ChatGPT kind of thing. But that should be something that you need to learn. You need to learn how to ask those questions correctly. Um, because you sort of get garbage in, garbage out. It's not garbage. You get simple in, you're gonna get simple back. That's
well, they're
what it
gonna
is.
answer the question you gave them. So, by broadening your question or changing it, you'll get out better information.
Right, right.
Simple question, simple answer.
That's correct. Because the model is going to a simple, high overview website, and it's kind of knowledge base, right? As opposed to
Mhm.
specific experts areas. And so I think of this as sort of pillar one of AI for everyone. And I think that that is very important for all of us, regardless of what your actual job is. I think it's a necessary thing and something you'll actually find very, very useful if you use it in society broadly. And I think for engineers, particularly into what I sort of call AI workflows and agents, people kind of fight about this agent term a lot. But let's just talk
Yeah.
about sort of instead of asking this thing, but you have it help you with emails. I'm giving a simple example. You learn how to get ChatGPT to help you with an email, and now instead of you putting the email in there every time, you're now going to automate it. When email received, then do this prompt because I really like the response from this thing over and over again. And now that's now an automations workflow because it's going off of some trigger that has nothing to do with me.
Right.
But I think engineers and design engineers, right? They still have all the other aspects besides just the actual design they're doing, right? They have to deal with their boss. They got to interview people, all these other things. In pillars 1 and 2, you can either automate a lot of that stuff or have it really be a partner with you, right? Think about like, hey, defining what you using it, by the way, talking with it about defining what the best, if you're a manager in engineering, in design engineering, what's the best kind of persona of somebody I want to hire? Work with it to help define that. Just talk about the best persona and who you would really want to work with. And then after you're doing that, then say, great, now make me a job description of what that looks like. Okay. Now it does a very good job description. And if you don't want to do the header of like our company does blah, 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 then just cut and, just reference your own website and we'll scrape it and give the context. Okay. And then, and let's not talk about, let alone that you can automate a lot of the sort of recruiting, like outreach and things like that.
Right.
Let's just say you get resumes in. Okay. Now you can say, hey, here is the job description and here are the resumes. And and hey, work with me to find the best candidate out of that. Score these for me based on these criteria as well. Here's what I care about, A, B, C, D. Certainly the job description helps here, but you can kind of rank them. And you're ranking them just with words, no code. And then once you're happy with that and you want to say, all right, I'm going to bring this candidate in and say, hey, this candidate's coming in. Write me a list of questions to flush out the areas that I don't think are coming out in the resume. Or if or it's suspect, right? And it can help you with those questions. Again, I think it is certainly lazy to always just say, well, I'm just going to take the output and go with what it is. You should be reading it. You should be understanding it. You should be working with it. And by the
Of
way, the
course.
more you do that, the better outcomes you get later on because it kind of learns. You're not changing the model. You're changing the context that the model understands about you as an individual. So that's a simple example where design engineers can then focus more on the thing that they probably really want to do, which is doing the design engineering, not all this
Yes.
arguably HR kind of, HR or whatever you want to call it kind of stuff. Or I have to have a tough conversation with an employee, right? Or I'm struggling with even peer to peer. Let's take out of the manager side. I'm struggling with this other employee. This is what they're doing. And you could try to talk through it. Like, let's have them act as that other employee. And you can have that conversation ahead of time to help, to help sort of arrive at the place you're trying to get. And it helps you at the end of the day build as an individual just in the workforce, period. And I think, so it doesn't need to just be always about the design. When you start to get into the pure design part of like, how do you automate some of those tasks? That gets into what I would call sort of some pillar 2 kind of stuff, but really pillar 3, where you have competitive advantage by using more specific tools or training models to help you out. And there are certainly startups that are kind of doing things that connect components automatically. There's like Flex AI and things like that, right? Sorry, Flex AI. And there's other
There's
ones
so
out there.
many. I wanted to insert here something my audience, because I've been bringing all the AI sort of based tools that I'm seeing, and that's a whole nother department, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is in parallel. So you as a design engineer, design manager, whatever it is that you're doing, this is to help you personally be more productive. And by the way, you get to go home and watch your kid's soccer game
Yes,
or
that is true.
whatever it is.
Very true.
I think quality of life, I mean, I know I'm a woman, and so I think a little differently, but I think it's going to give engineers some of their time back because the complexity of the things they're handling, like, let's get over the spreadsheets, you guys. Like,
Right.
the spreadsheets need to die, right? And we have AI now, plus we have emerging tools that are leveraging AI, so you don't have to do that. So
It
I
is,
I think
it's
that's
totally
the
true.
opportunity.
What you're saying
Yeah,
is absolutely true. I go home more now at 5:30 than I ever have before. And that is
isn't
because I
that
am
great?
being much more productive in my day. being assisted by these tools. Now, can every job do that without the proper tools? No. I think design engineering is a great point there. But what I started with, this whole pH probe example or whatever, it doesn't matter what example it is, and what companies are trying to figure out how to connect components automatically and things like that. I'm telling you, design engineers work with ChatGPT. Then you can get into the kind of things like Cursor. I'm a big fan of Cursor, which is a software development environment. You don't need to know software to get into these things. You can create the things that you see as threats to your own career from an outside point of view, like some of these automated systems. You can make those yourself. I'm telling you, if you are curious and don't sort of give up, you do not need a degree in any of this stuff. You don't even have gone to a class for any of this stuff. You can be very crisp about what the problem is, which is the key. Do not lead it to solutions.
Key.
Be very crisp about what the problem is and stick with it in a ChatGPT kind of environment to define this. And then it can break it down to the steps for how to do this. How do I set up a server? How do I maybe think about connecting A to
Right.
B for these outputs? And then you say, well, it gets more fancy than that. You have to really have specific models. If you don't need a machine learning scientist to do that anymore. You can say, this is what I want to do. And if you're good, you can go to rent some GPUs on the cloud, and it will teach you how to do this, the fine tuning or the model development itself for the crazy thing you're trying to do. Because you will run into this space. You will run into this space where this is beyond the general models of ChatGPT and things like that. But every individual in the world with curiosity and systems thinking can do, quite frankly, anything they want, as long as they keep that curiosity up and not giving up. And so you don't need to feel threatened by those ones. You can use them to enhance your job, but you can also make your own that is more proprietary, if you will, to yourself, and deliver that value for your company or your own time. To your
And you
point.
can, if you're really fancy, you can get your own servers, inside, or leverage your own servers inside your company and keep all that IP protected, which is,
Yes,
of course, top of
that's
mind,
correct.
especially for companies like mil-aero companies, like security, reliability, like people's lives are at stake here. And I'm encouraged that I think we're moving in that direction. But the margins have been too slim for too long in our industry to do some of these things, and I think this really opens an opportunity to preserve the profit margins while doing it more securely and reliably, and then the tools are coming up. So I feel like we are in an exciting time, and it's hard to track all that. Um, well, and what Summit is doing to leverage these modern tools to you're already I believe I'm biased because 'cause I've known a lot of you for a long time. Um, there's absolutely a culture of excellence and, like, decades of knowledge and wisdom represented inside the Summit team,
Yeah.
and however, that you guys are embracing the use of this tool to even take that up a notch, I think is gonna be a real differentiator for you and also help you be more valuable to your customers. I mean, the way I think of it is like, how many conversations have me and Jerry Partita had about DFM? Don't do this with your vias. Don't when you put connectors on the edge, turn this off, like, and then we want them to go take that in from a podcast, apply it over here, and send it to Jerry, and then Jerry's got to call them back. It's still based on such a physical world model instead of sort of connecting the super intelligence that can just fast track you to that place. And then you have those real people to help you tweak and build those bridges together. But I mean, from the way we were doing it 5 years ago till now is otherworldly to me.
Yeah.
And I think Summit and you are on the cutting edge of that for our industry and, which is why I wanted to have you on. Why don't you take a moment and tell people, because I'm sure design engineers have listened to a few things that you've said and they're like, oh, I want to know more about that. And certainly they can connect with you on LinkedIn or reach out to Summit. But I know you've started sort of an AI community online. Why don't you take a moment and tell folks about that? So if they want to tap into that too, to be better design engineers and work well with Summit, tell them where they can tap into that.
Yeah. I certainly on LinkedIn, follow me. I'm talking about things that we're thinking about internally and just sharing, just teaching, right? I think there's sort of, Summit brand. We're trying to build around those kind of things. Um, and I also found it helpful that, um, maybe ties a little bit back to what you talked about, bringing sort of technologies back to your own servers. Okay. If you asked me a year ago, I would told you we're running towards the cloud. We're trying to get off on-prem. If you ask me today, I'm saying we're going on-prem. And that is because with the advent of AI, like if you even sort of blip anything out on the internet, these things are out there sucking up information all the time. And now you don't need to just have in the past, you had to, if you were Googling something, you had to ask a question in the way that somebody asked that question before and answered it. Now you
Right.
don't need to do that. Now it sort of can formulate that. And so private information can be quickly sucked up into the models in a very specific manner that nobody needs to specifically ask about to get to that manner. They can just kind of show up. Um,
Right.
and so as it relates to kind of bringing things back again, like, so it was cloud, maybe I'm saying we need to go back. I think the same thing happens almost with social media in some ways, right? Clutter is going to already starting to happen. There's a lot of AI-ness out there where, it's kind of cluttering feeds and content's not always the best and things like that. There's sort of, I'll
Mm-hmm.
say, lazy people that are sort of outsourcing without being thought partnering. Sorry, they're not leading the AI. They're just trying to make a quick buck with clicks.
Right.
So I think that then lends itself to communities, whether they're local communities. And I had the best conversations by just going to local meetups in Southern California on these things. And we're sharing sort of as humans again, because you kind of want to get off the phone in some ways. To share
Totally.
stuff.
And I have
And so
predicted,
community, it's
Sean,
all about
that
community.
AI is going to push us towards humanity, not pull us
It's
further
true.
apart.
I have
Like,
the same
it's
thought, Judy. But
really
that's
okay.
that's the optimistic view of all this.
Yeah, well,
There is a
that's my
pessimistic one of
inclination
how many.
anyways. If we don't, Sean, we're gonna all become cyborgs. Like
Yeah,
we kind of already are. And it's like we have mental health issues. This is not good. I'll just talk about myself. Me sitting in front of a keyboard all day doing this does not enrich my life. Like I need to find my people, and like I need sunshine in humans. And I think there's a lot of magic when we come together as human beings and talk about these things and how to use it rather than be used by it.
that's right. And there's sort of these arguments. You say the future winds up being, the 4-day work week and then the 3-day work weeks, or maybe it's like the Wall-E movie or Ready Player One. I'm not sure where things go. I don't think it's overtly dystopian, but there certainly is social probably disorders that happen as a result of people that are able to adopt these for various reasons and not. But as it relates to the community, I was saying sort of coming back to this community, I found that I just created a community for people that are sort of just tangential to my ecosphere to just share ideas, right? And not have to be cluttered by social media, right? And so it's not something
Right.
that I don't like post it and things like that. That's not the point. It's only people that want to share and learn like you and I are doing. And, I know you're in it. It's just to share that information, right? It's not, it's literally, you can anybody can start these things. And it's just forums, the old school forums of just sharing
It
information,
is
but
cool.
you're doing it with people that's just not the internet at large. And it's people that are, again, for the one I have, that are tangential to me, but I've been in PCB manufacturing. I've been in Amazon and middle mile logistics, as well as healthcare. I've been in the US Navy and submarines. I've done a couple startup stuff, did 3D printing. And so I'm seeing sort of different people throughout my career kind of come together and share on this. And that's all it is. Like, it's just a platform for sharing. But I think it helps me think about how what I see people asking about and sharing about helps me think about what I can do for my own company and drive that value. I don't think nobody's sharing like proprietary stuff. You're always in this pillar one stuff of things that everybody should be learning about.
Yeah, it
Um,
is that first pillar that you talked about where it's AI for everybody and maybe just getting an idea, that you hadn't thought of before. Anyways, I jumped right in. And for our audience, if that's something of interest to you, like jump in. What is the name of that? I'll put the link in the show notes, but Sean, why don't you share the link both to Summit Interconnect because I'm sure people would love to deal with company that's so forward thinking on their boards, but what's the
So the
URL
community
or
forum is called CrossGen.ai,
okay,
crossgen-ai.com. And you can just enter the community from there, and then you see what everybody shared. And again, it's just sort of an open sharing community. Again,
okay.
trying to get out of the social media worlds and stuff like that. You're pigeon whatever content you want. Um, but it's really meant for cross generation, by the way. Like that's the pitch is it's cross gen across generations. And so we're trying to take the for those that are hesitant to kind of learn AI, particularly those that are long in your careers, things like that. If you have a lot of experience in your career and you can pivot to using these tools, you are the most valuable person in the world right now. The younger, less experienced junior community, while they can adopt this stuff well, they don't know the problem to solve.
Right.
Right. And whereas the individual has experience, knows the problem to solve. And if they're able to adopt that, those are the people that are doing 100x output, whereas the junior people are more like 10x. And I think that's lost a bunch of people. And so I'm trying to like bridge that generational gap of having the young, the
Clever.
old, and the old kind of get curious and figure things out. But it's just people sharing their own experiences within a forum. Like it's not nothing fancy. Um,
Well, I like it, and for our listeners, if you don't have time to go check out the show notes, just find Sean Peterson from Summit Interconnect on LinkedIn, and he posts these daily things, and like I'm beginning to look forward to. I'm like, ooh, what's next? And it might be a change in the algorithm, or it might just be a little tip of the day, or you know, just that you
I'm
can
just
just
sharing
you're
things
on
that I run
LinkedIn.
into, quite frankly, and that's all I
Right,
expect other people to do. There's
that's
no,
it, and so to me, I use LinkedIn pretty heavily for the ecosystem, so it's like a no-brainer, like, you're there anyways, and the algorithm serves you up in my feed, which I'm happy about, so that's a really easy way. Same with Summit. Summit has a company page there. Summit has great learning resources on their website, by the way. So it's also I'll put all that below, and you can take a deep dive. But if you don't do anything else, find Sean and find Summit on LinkedIn, and that should put you on a good path. Well, we could talk for at least another an hour and a half. At least I could talk
well, I
to
think we
you.
do all the time that Judy outside of these.
I know. Just it was ridiculous prepping for this call because we definitely started down the rabbit hole. But I think you're really onto something, and that you're thinking about this in my beloved PCB fabrication world is just such a breath of fresh air because I've written, since before .com and beyond. I've seen this industry get decimated to the peril, I think, of a lot of design engineers, particularly prototyping are really high complexity boards, and that we can really make a pivot and find a gain here is very exciting for me personally. And then on a fun side, applying the things that your community is sharing for my own work has been really great. So, well, thank you for that, Sean. Any last thoughts before I let you go?
Yeah. Again, I told you we are going to wind up using the word AI a lot. I think that look, understanding these things for your own career is good. For your own personal life is great. How you employ them in a business matter, you need to think about. But learning is the critical thing right now. It is a time of great change. Nobody went to school. There's like people that went to school to train models, but nobody went to school for the application of AI. If you think that that is the trajectory, then you need to be learning like you've never learned before. And by the way, AI can help you with that. And then figuring out how you apply that in a business manner to make money. That's the key, right? And you're not gonna be able to pull these things off the shelf and have it do your job for you. That's not the point. It's the point is to work with it to understand how you can add value, like we're trying to do at Summit. Of how do I now get my IoT sensors out there because we don't have standards in our industry, and we can do these things where I don't need to hire 10,000 experts to do it. We're doing more things that are more straightforward. If there's knowledge around it, you can figure it out. And then if you really want to, in time, get into starting that pillar 3 of that's very proprietary to you, then you can really help your company out and grow it, or you could start your own company because you have such a great tool. And getting to that tool one has nothing to do with skill. It's about will and curiosity. It really is. And I think the more you work with it, you'll find that these things will be very useful for helping work with your manufacturing partners to get your products more well. to get your product with through DFM, right? And kind of ask these questions
Right.
ahead of time. And you mentioned Jerry. Jerry uses this a lot, especially when it gets in the areas that Jerry doesn't have experience in, like um, certain types of like heat fluxes and things like that, where we're kind of maybe not have a big base on it, but through the use of the tools, he's actually able to speak in areas that he may not be a pure expert in. And instead of grabbing somebody else to come in, we can answer those questions more easily with the information that we have, at the tip of our finger. So I encourage everybody to do it. And Summit's going that way. So great. Appreciate the good conversation again, Judy, as always. So.
Well, you're stuck with me now, buddy, and hoping our listeners will connect with you and get on the ride with me, and also the amazing things you're doing at Summit. So, congratulations on the job change and all the exciting things you're doing. And I'll be sure to put all the links in the show notes, and promise me, my friend, we'll come back and we'll have more case studies for design engineers, and sort of that bridge between design engineering and actually bare board shops to help them do that DFM. I think this is going to be a game changer.
Absolutely.
For our listeners, please go check out the show notes. I'll give you lots of good resources there. And as I said, push the easy button. Go connect with Sean Patterson or Summit Interconnect Technology on LinkedIn and join the journey with us. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next week. Until then, remember to always stay connected to the ecosystem.